Hello world and welcome to my kitchen. Today I want to go over a simple meal that you can make at home. So when you're on the go, this meal takes about 15 to 20 minutes to make. And we're going to be talking about basic things that our body needs and basic things that are in the food. We're going to be making a meal of chicken, rice, broccoli, and cheese sauce that goes over the broccoli for those who hate broccoli like my kids. And we're going to kind of go into the science of what that looks like, what making a meal like that looks like, but also understanding the food science behind it so that that meal can come out the best that it possibly can. The first couple things I want to talk about are the types of energy that are going to be cooking our food. The first one I want to talk about is conduction. That is when thermal energy is exchanged from one particle to a nearby one by means of collision. So they're bouncing into each other. Or a movement that induces movement, like for example, through like electrical attraction or repulsion. That process is called conduction, okay? And the energy is a heat source. We also have convection, which is vaporizing heat, herbs, or concentrate indirectly with the forced steam or hot air until vapors are released. We are going to be using that as well. And you're going to be seeing that with the rice maker. And then radiation, which we'll see a lot of. Radiation, that does not require direct physical contact between heat source and the object. All the matter emits thermal radiation all the time, though normally we can detect it only when something is very hot. So those are the means by which we're going to be cooking this simple meal today. Things that we don't normally think about when we're going, but things that are very important when we're talking about the chemistry and the makeup of the individual foods we're going to be making. The first one I want to talk about is the chicken. So I'm going to be making the chicken and I'm going to be baking the chicken. I'm going to be using a chicken breast. These are all of our, let's see if I can switch this around here. I guess I can't switch it. So these are all of our ingredients. We got chicken and we're going to be using chicken breast. We have the rice. I already have a piece of chicken marinating. We have the cheese for the cheese sauce and our measurements. We also have some tools that are going to be used for the kitchen. We have our oven mitts so that we keep our hands safe. We also have our cookie tray for the chicken. That's going to go in the oven. We have our saucepan. And we have the microwave that we're going to be heating the broccoli up, which I have it ready here to go. So the first thing I want to talk about is our flavor profile. We have to first flavor our chicken because we are using a chicken breast. Chicken breast is considered a white meat, so it's not as flavorful as a red meat. A red meat would be something that's exercised a little more. So like on a chicken, you would get like the legs or something like that. That would be a more, the meat is getting more to it. So we're using a boneless chicken breast. So it's gonna have a lot less flavor. So we want to make sure that that flavor is added. So what I use to flavor it is garlic salt. And what that is salt is a mineral and garlic is an herb. And those two together are going to be flavoring our chicken. The chicken itself is going to be our protein. And let me get there. So I want to go into the flavorings a little more. The function of the herbs and spices is to add flavor to our foods. The flavor is composite quality. It's a combination of sensations from the taste buds, so in our tongue, our mouth, and the odor receptors in the upper reaches of our nose. So it's both our tongue and how we smell. These sensations are chemical in nature, and we do taste and smell odors when our receptors are triggered by specific chemicals in food. So ultimately, that's what's happening when we're seasoning our food. And I've only put half a teaspoon of garlic salt in there. You don't need a lot of flavoring in that, okay? Now let's get to the chicken itself. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna set you down here. Hopefully you can stand up. What we're gonna do is I have my chicken right here in a bag. I'm just gonna place it right here on the cookie sheet. And we are gonna place that into the oven. Even before the pot is hot, I like to put my oven mitts on just in case we end up touching something. And what's gonna happen is radiation heat and some convection is going to heat that up. And that's going to cook our meat for us. So we got to set a timer here. We can use a meat thermometer. Typically, I like to do chicken breast by time. Usually I do 7 minutes and 30 seconds on one side, and then I flip it over and I do another. If you have a really hard time kind of managing time, you can wait for that to go all the way through. I suggest when you're making a meal with different things, you go on to the next step. So what we're going to do while we're waiting for that meat to cook, we're going to go to our next step. And that is going to be our rice. So what the rice is I just want a quick reminder is starch is just a chain. So we're talking about our starch now. It's just a chain of sugars, and there's really two forms that starch can take when it comes to grains and legumes. It can either be an amylose form, which is a single long chain, which can be somewhere in the neighborhood of, 100 sugars lined up, okay? And usually it's end to end, straight line. And then the other one is amylopectin, which is branch. There's a lot of branches that come from that, and those can have hundreds of branches coming out, and usually there's a lot more sugars, more like 500 or maybe close to 2,000 sugars on that. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at when we're talking about our grains or our starch in this case, okay? So what the rice is going to do when it's in the machine, so let's get the rice. And typically when you're making rice, you're going to want to do a 2-to-1 ratio. So however much rice you put, in this case, we're going to be putting, actually let's do it this way. We're going to be putting just a half a cup, just to make for one person. And you can go up depending upon how much you want to make. So with the cup that I have here is half a cup of rice, and you want to do 2-to-1. So if I do half a cup here, I'm going to want 2 cups of water to this 1 cup of rice, okay? This is our rice maker, and I'm just going to pour this in here. I like using a rice maker because typically the rice comes out better, but you can use it on the stove. So if you don't have a rice maker, you can still cook rice on the stove. I'm not going to go into that today. But that is something that you can do. So we're going to get our second cup of in here. And what I'm going to do is this lid has a hole in it. And a lot of people like to wash their rice before they cook it. I don't normally do that. If you're going to do it on the stove, I do recommend it. What rice is it's full. It has, even those little grains have so much starch on them that it's probably worth it to wash your rice and put it in a strainer. So that if you are making it on the stove, it's a lot less of a mess. So a lot of times you'll see bubbles and stuff come up. I'll try to get a picture of that if we have time. But those bubbles will come up, and what you see, a lot of that bubbly stuff is starch coming off of the rice. A lot of people like to wash that off before they make it. It makes less of a mess. I've always had great rice coming out without washing my rice, so that is not something that you need to do, okay? So with the steamed rice that I'm making, amylose is a component of rich starch. It is high in amylose. Usually contains about 24% amylose content, and each rice is different, so that would be on the milled rice. The intermediate amylose rice contains between 20 and 24%, and the low amylose rice contains 10 to 19%. Okay, so there are different rices that you can make here. I just went with something that you can get. This is the one we've always used. And this is like an enriched amylose one. So this is on the higher end. Okay. Next, while the chicken is cooking, we still have about 3 minutes and 30 seconds on that before we check it. And the rice is going, and the cool thing with the rice maker is it's going to tell us when it's done. So we can kind of just let that sit. That takes about 20 minutes though. So it does take a little bit of time. So usually you want to start that really early in your cooking process. Okay. And the next thing we're going to do is vegetables. I chose to do broccoli. Okay, so I do have it in a glass container because I'm going to be putting it in the microwave. The microwave will get generally ceramics and stuff. It will get really hot. It will heat those molecules up, and it will get really hot. So when you're transporting that in and out, it can be very hot. So I choose to use glass. I put a little bit of water and butter in with the broccoli so that when I do cook it, it gets a little bit of flavor in there and also softens that broccoli up, which is what we want. I could boil the broccoli, but we're going to lose a lot of the content that we want from the nutrients. What's in broccoli is if you're either eating it raw or cooked, broccoli is particularly rich source of vitamin C and vitamin K. Its contents of its characteristic are sulfur-containing glucosylates compounds and some other words I cannot pronounce. And they're diminished by boiling them. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we put them in the microwave as not to diminish that, okay? And then the last thing we're gonna do is a sauce. So while that's all cooking, we got about 2 minutes. So we're making good time. The rice is cooking. We got the broccoli going in the microwave. We got the chicken in there. Is a sauce. The sauce is probably, it's one of the easiest parts of the meal. But it's also something that you have to stay on the entire time that you're doing it. What the sauce is very simple. This is where you kind of see chemistry come together. You're going to be melting butter in a saucepan. It's 2 tablespoons of butter over a medium heat. And then you're also going to add 2 tablespoons of flour. Okay, so I have this tablespoon here. One thing you want to make sure that you do is that you're not just doing the 2 tablespoons of flour. Okay, so what I did is I have a kitchen scale. I turn it on. Let's see, wait. So I weigh the spoon that I'm going to be using. Okay, so it's 15 grams. I looked up how much 1 tablespoon of flour is supposed to be. So I found out that it's close to 15 grams itself. So when you weigh your spoon with the flour in it, it should come out to roughly around 30 grams of weight. At that point, you can add it into where the butter is. And when you add it into the butter, you're going to stir softly. And for time's sake, I'm not going to do that, but you're gonna add it. You're gonna add it into there. You're gonna stir it, and it's gonna look like granules. That's okay. They're coming together, and that's what they're supposed to do. At that point, you're going to want to, once it thickens, you're going to want to add the milk. And it calls for 1 cup of milk. So you add the milk in there, and you're going to stir that for about 3 minutes until it thickens. And you'll know this is a normal milk, okay? So you're stirring it up. And once that milk is thick, then you're going to add your cheese in there. When you add your cheese, you're just going to start stirring that, and you're going to see it all come together. All those things are going to come together and make a cheese sauce, okay? And for the sake of the video, let me see here. So far we've talked about how to make the rice, how to make the chicken, kind of get that going in there. A lot of these things you just kind of let sit. Right now, our chicken is actually done, so I'm going to open the oven. And like I said, always remember that you're using something that protects your hands, okay? So we want to make sure that we're using an oven mitt. So at this point, we can kind of see what the color of the chicken is. It still has some more cooking to do. Always turn off your timer because it's annoying. And then at that point, we are going to flip the chicken, and you can use tongs, you can use whatever helps you to kind of flip that chicken over. In my case, I'm gonna use some tongs. So we're gonna flip the chicken over. We can kind of see that there's still some cooking that needs to happen here. And we're gonna put it back in, and I always do 7.5 minutes, and then I switch it over and I put it on for another 4 minutes. And then we check it again, okay? Chicken can be deceiving. We want to make sure that the chicken, even though on the outside the chicken shows and looks like it's cooked, we want to make sure that the inside is cooked because we don't want any bacteria like salmonella making us sick. Okay. All right. Where are we at here? And the reason I keep reading here is I don't want you guys to ever get discouraged to read, especially when trying to make sure. If you want to cook something right, you want to make sure the chemistry of the cooking, it is always okay to look at your notes, your resources. I mean, we have grandparents and great-grandparents passing down ingredients and I can't even think of the word, recipes for a reason, because there's a lot that go into these and there's a certain amount of each thing that we want to make sure. So never be afraid to look at notes, to look at recipes, to get help on how to cook these things, and to look up the information on the science behind these things to get the best result from your cooking. Okay. So the finished product of the meal, which is I will show you now. So I am cooking on the outside, and I did kind of show you, but I did already cook the meal. And it's going to end up something like this. So we have our chicken. We have our rice over here. And we have our broccoli with our cheese sauce. Sorry, that's so close. I don't have a camera guy. I can't afford that. So that is what the meal ends up becoming. And with the way that we cooked it, we're going to get our protein, we're going to get our starches, we're going to get our sauce, and we're going to get our vegetable. And like I say, broccoli is one of my favorites, but my kids don't like it, so I kind of have to add that sauce to it to give it a little bit more enticement for my kids to say. So but you can, I know with a cheese sauce too and dairy, that can be sensitive to some people's stomach with a dairy allergy. So you can always change the sauce up. You can season it. I chose in this meal just a simple meal that takes about 15 to 20 minutes. The science behind it, and if you know what's going on with the science, it really adds to the flavor components, and it just makes for a well-rounded meal. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. And you guys have an amazing day.